Hi, welcome back to Repair Lawnmowers for Profit. In this video I'm going to go and pick up this Mc Culloch M40 Petrol Lawnmower 1 for just £25 on eBay. Everybody remember eBay? It's been a while since I've got one off there instead of Facebook. It's in Ripon, which is around a half an hour drive from here. It's not too far, so I'm going to go and pick it up now in the mobile. And I've actually got Mower nav now because I've got a newer car, so that's good. That'll show me exactly where this mower is. So we'll go and pick it up and bring it back here. And apparently the primer bulb's been chewed by Mickey Mouse, so I'll go and get it and we'll get started straight away. If this is your first time on Repairing Lawnmowers for Profit, be sure to subscribe and tick the bell notification. That way I can keep you up to date on all future videos. You won't miss a thing. And best of all, it's completely free. Right, so this is all a bit of a strange, nice sort of little place, but I've got it anyway. Just picked it up from this house here. And as you said, it's got the primer bulb here that's been chewed. But it's got all the governor springs on, it's got an air filter on with the box on the wrong way around, so somebody's obviously been in here, but it's all complete, like obviously apart from the box. But anyway, I picked it up, and apart from it being a bit dirty, I think it's going to be in quite nice condition, is this? So let's get this back and let's have a look at this. Right, so here we go, I'm back. I've just had a quick look behind my garage there. I've actually got a spare grass box, but it's not for this, which is really quite annoying. I had one I scrapped a while ago. I don't often scrap them. I will take the bits off them if you're going to scrap them, but I scrapped one earlier on this year. I just didn't have time to sort out, but the box I kept, and unfortunately it doesn't fit, so that's annoying. But anyway, here we are. We've got this nibbled primer bulb, so that shouldn't be too bad to do. I should have one of those. No self-drive on this, but it was cheap and cheerful. Cables look okay. I'm a bit annoyed about this grass box deflector. That's got a bit of a crack in it, that's quite annoying. So it should be alright to run once we get this primer bulb sorted. So let's just take that off. Let's just tip this up. Look at the blade. Always tip these carburetor side up like this. Yeah, doesn't look too bad. There's a nice even gap there between the end of the blade and the deck. Everything looks to be okay, looks to be nice and tight. Oh, it's great, almost like mouldy dried on under there. It looks very hard dried on under there. It wants a wire brush under all these bits here. Oh, this deck is going to rot in no time. So let's just go in the garage and see if I've got a spare primer bulb. I think I've got a few of these somewhere. I've got a box of stuff up here. Just turn this light on here. I've actually got a carb on here somewhere. I haven't got a tank on. I've actually got this up here. I have a spare set up here I can use. So I've got one on here. And you can tell if these are priming because you get fuel just flying through here like this. Watch. Oh, you can't see. Maybe that one isn't priming. No fuel in it, there's nothing left in that one. But it looks like I've got a spare primer bulb. Wants a little bit of a clean up. Might just have a look in this box here and see if I've got another one as well. Check there's actually some oil in it. This is a 450 series Briggs engine, but this is the one with the normal, what I call the normal style carb. It's not got the newer style. It's still a 450 series. There's a 450 series E which has got a different type of carb on nowadays, but yeah, there's some oil in there. Obviously I've not cleaned that dipstick off, but that looks particularly black, so we'll give that a change. I think what I'll do with this mower, simply because I've got the time really, is I'm going to clean this up, and I think we'll just give this a full service. And I'll show you how to do anything you might need to do to service a Briggs and Stratton 450 series Mc Culloch M40 Petrol Lawnmower. And I do think this will tidy up quite nice as well, just a bit dirty. But if I can get a grass box for this, I think this could make a nice little sale. And I'm also, to be honest with you, because I've only got a little bit of grass here and I've got about the same at the front, I'm also considering this to keep for myself because I've had my other on, my SP470, for quite a long time, and I don't currently need one with a drive on. I used to want one with a drive on because I used to help a few people out. I know, and just cut the grass for them, but I don't do that anymore. I don't need to do it anymore, so I might actually clean this up and service it and keep this one just for myself. So classic signs that someone's been in here. Air filter box is on the wrong way. If you watch my very early videos, I always used to do this as well, but that's an absolute guarantee that somebody's actually had this air filter off and looked at this inside. So I'm really hoping these governor springs are in here. I'll just get a flat-headed screwdriver and we'll just quickly take this off. I've just got back in, so I want to go get some dinner as well. I still didn't do very well on Popmaster. I think I got 12 today. I even got a Gabrielle answer wrong, which is quite poor. But anyway, that's a different story. I did that while I was in the car. So, if we just whip this out of here, like this. Let's see if this air filter's black. If it's really black and really covered in oil, it's because this has been tipped up. You see, that's the side of a lawnmower that hasn't been tipped up the wrong way. If it had, this would be absolutely dripping with black oil, and that's fairly clean. So it's nice to know that it hasn't been sort of tipped over or too far on its side the wrong way. And what I really like to see is this, and these governor springs, which are very dirty. You can actually see the both here, and they both don't look like they've been fiddled with. They've not been stretched or messed about with, and everything, even though it's very dirty, moves as it should. It's even got this little air filter, little gasket still on here, and everything's connected up nice. So apart from being really dirty, everything's there. It's like I've got a complete lawnmower apart from a box. And I hate buying lawnmowers without grass boxes because it's so difficult to sell them. So I'll keep my eye out for one. If anyone's got one they want to sell me at a reasonable price, I'll probably buy it off them, to be honest with you. So it won't sell massively because it hasn't got a drive and it hasn't got a grass box, but at least I can help anybody out looking to service one of these Mc Cullochs. But we've got the exhaust guard on, which is nice. That's nice and secure. We've got adjusters on front and back as well. These are quite nice little metal adjusters. I quite like these mowers. They're all reasonable decks, these like metal decks, I like powder coated decks, and I like these little Mc Cullochs. I quite like the McAllister ones as well with the Briggs engine on. This handle setup, you could argue, is a little bit flimsy, but not too bad. And the cable, that's the case, I pull this cable. Yeah, that pulls really nice. This just operates down here, this just operates this brake here, and in turn operates a kill switch. If this doesn't work properly, you won't get any spark, the ignition coil won't work, of course your lawnmower won't start. So, it's a nice sunny afternoon now, so I think I'm going to go get a little bit of dinner. I'm going to get my table set up, and we'll take this up on the table, and we'll just strip this down, and we'll give this a real good service. So I've just been thinking about this. I think what we're going to do first is we're going to replace this primer bulb, and we'll just get some fuel going through. I'll show you how to check the fuel is going through as well. I'll give you a few pointers as to why this is such a great mower to start on repairing lawnmowers for profit as well. And I've got this other primer I can take off. I'll show you how to swap that over, and then we'll do what everybody's waiting for. We'll try and start this mower up before we give it a full service. So for anybody who doesn't know, this is a primer bulb. If you press this, the way to tell if you're getting fuel going across is if you look, you should have some fuel going from here to here, firing across. Obviously, you press this button and nothing's going to happen. Now the way to get this out of here is I use a flat-headed screwdriver there. There's a little tab there, and there's one at the other side, and I kind of just put it in and evenly just move each side out. And you've got to kind of, the trick to it really is just to move them out evenly till the whole thing pulls out. I'm going to do the same on this one here. This is a test carb that I use. I keep this one here. It's got a bit of a mess on the back of it somehow, but I keep this one because I know this one works perfectly. This is a good tip, this. If you get a carb you know is running and working perfectly on these mowers, it's only 2 bolts here. There's one here and one here, and a linkage to unhook. You can swap it over for a carb setup and a tank you know is working perfectly. It's got the proper rings in the back. These are missing on here actually. And you can swap it over and test it. That way you can eliminate any running problems. You can see straight away if it's a carb or if there's another problem with it. So I'm going to get a flat-headed screwdriver. I'm just going to put this inside here like this in this tab and press it. It's quite firm, so you need a little bit of strength to push it, and then these tabs should just pull forward of this, and I can take this whole primer bulb out. It's a real simple fix. If you need any of these bits of kit like the diaphragm and gasket, the springs, or a primer bulb, if you look at my website, which is repairlawnmowersforprofit.com, you can find everything on there. It's a complete parts store, and there's also a link to where you can get genuine gaskets at a reasonable price that are actually going to work if you replace them. So let's get this primer bulb off. So you can normally hear if this comes off. I'm just going to push the screwdriver in. If you listen, you can hear it's just clicked out of there. I'll do the same at the other side. You can actually remove this petrol cap just to give you a bit better access as well. A tiny bit of fuel in the bottom of there, not too much. I'll tuck that in there. That's actually moved as well. So now the key is to just go evenly each side until this actual whole thing comes out, and I'll show you these actual tabs when they come right out of here as well. You can probably just see they're coming to the front now. We'll just get in there. You can see This got little tabs on the side of it here, like this. They're the little things that you need to press with a screwdriver, and this whole thing pops out. So it's absolutely filthy in there. Wants a really good clean out. I'm going to do that when I service the carb, but just for the sake of the video, I'm just going to undo this one here as well. Put my screwdriver in there. Do exactly the same thing. Just put that petrol can back on there. Don't like standing here breathing fumes in if I don't need to. So exactly the same thing. Once you get it past that first point, it's not normally too bad to do. It's just initially getting it past that first little bit there. As you can see there. I should be able to pull this whole thing out there. And what I can do here is I can just replace this primer bulb. These tabs here need to go at 3 and 9 o'clock if you like, which is here, and they actually link in there. This is all going to get cleaned out when I service it. But I just want to show you that if you replace this, this should prime this. So get this, take a while to get this nice and neat. It's going to bend down to the same level. Just push this in just a little bit, make sure it goes in evenly. It didn't there. And I just get this started, and what I tend to do is I tend to get a socket. If you've got one, get a socket and put it around the primer bulb and push it back evenly. If not, you'll have to use 2 screwdrivers, one in each hand from each side, and just push it back. So I'm just going to go and grab a socket. So I have a 20mm socket here, and we're going to put this on the tabs that I pulled out. Remember when I showed you them at 3 and 9 o'clock? That actually fits on, and if you push this back, you can actually get it really nice and even, and just push this whole thing back in. That's nearly gone back to where I want. I'm just going to go in at the sides and click it all the way back like that. And now what you'll find is we have a primer bulb that works. I'll put a bit of fuel in here and I'll show you how to check it's working. I'm just going to get a little bit of fuel and put it in here. The reason I'm doing this before I actually service it is I want to see what this runs like before I start servicing it, because if it doesn't run right after, I won't know if it ran right before. So I always like to start these up before I strip all this carb down. You've probably seen here just how dirty it is. I'll show you that in just a second. As I've said, these are real good mowers to learn how to do all these things on. As I've said before, because there's only 2 bolts to take out, 1 linkage, but also, put that on there. Also, because you haven't got a whole fuel line to take off that runs to a carb. All the petrol's in this tank and the carb stays on top of it, so you're not having to clamp a fuel line and take it off and try and stop the fuel flowing, putting a bolt in the end and all those sorts of things. So for those reasons, it's a lot cleaner and tidy to work on. To me, it just makes more sense. So I said I would show you how to check if this is priming properly. When I pressed this bulb, obviously before, this primer bulb, I didn't have anything firing across here from this near side to the far side. If I press this now, let's just take a few goes. I've just filled it up with fuel. I should see fuel firing from one side to the other, and I still don't, but I know the primer bulb's in good order. There's a little bit coming through there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a bit more fuel in here. I didn't put a lot in. I'm going to give this another chance, but this could easily have a blockage in as well. Let's drop a bit more fuel in. Let's just try this again. So even with this filled up with fuel, it still doesn't fire across. So that's a classic sign of the diaphragm and gasket needs changing in here between this carburettor and this petrol tank. It's quite obvious to me he's been having some running problems with this before this primer bulb was apparently eaten by a mouse. He might have even just done that to sell this mower. I don't like to say that about people really, but if there's no fuel going through there, obviously this mower wouldn't start before, and it's certainly not going to start now. So people have strange reasons when they come to sell these. They'll either cut the pull cord off and say it was running fine, but the pull cord's, you know, snapped and actually the recoil's all broken inside, or something major's broken. The classic telltale sign for me was that they'd had the air filter off and put it back on the wrong way. So they've obviously been in here, had a quick look around. Luckily for me, they haven't messed about with these springs, which is normally the case. Someone's normally wired these all over the place, and I ain't got to buy these because these are so expensive. So at least I know now I've no chance of getting this running. I can start stripping this mower down. We can give this a proper service, and when it's got a brand new diaphragm and gasket in here which pumps the fuel through here, you'll find it primes across here perfectly. Don't know how many times I'm going to knock that off. You'll find it primes across here perfectly, and this lawnmower will start and run. So let's start by taking this cover off. We'll take all this recoil off and we can get in here, give it a good clean out, and we'll just change this diaphragm and gasket over. Another sign that someone's been in here is when these covers are loose. Don't ever lose these, by the way. I always sell it with this on. This somehow makes a big difference to selling it, because when you take it off, it kind of ages a lawnmower, I always think. soon as you take this off, it kind of ages it, sort of 10 years really. It just looks like any other lawnmower that you could have bought maybe 15 years ago. So I'll take this off now with a 7mm socket. I'll just undo this. So just to correct myself there, the 1/4" socket actually fits a lot better. Now I've got the right tool, I can actually get these screws out of here. I was using a 7mm socket, but the 1/4" one fits perfectly. I can all get this off now. It was just the wrong size, so my mistake there. Don't mind leaving that in the video, because I just didn't have enough grip to get hold of these and take these out. You can probably hear as well the bin men are here now, so anybody who's got an SV150 engine, you could probably get rid of it. That's a joke, Mick. Talking to Mick's Mowers here. Everybody watches Mick's Mowers channel. He had a live stream the other day. We were chatting and I did a premiere of one of my videos. Mick actually likes these SV150s. He thinks they're alright. So I ain't going to argue with him. He knows his stuff. So I'm not going to be so look at that there. I'm not going to be so rough on these SV150s. This is a Briggs engine, not an SV150. I always have a bit of a joke about the SV150s because they always tend to be a bit of a nightmare. So I'll not bin it, Mick, anyway. But look at this. You can see what I mean about it aging it. If you were to try and sell that like that, it seems to make a big difference. And look at this under here. It's like uncovering a little gem, isn't it? Little Briggs and Stratton logo on here. You can just see how dirty all this is. I'm going to take this recoil cover off. And we'll just have a look inside here, and we're going to take this carb off in this tank, clean absolutely everything up, make sure all these cooling fins are nice and clean as well. Before you do anything, as I say in every video, make sure you remove this spark plug lead as well. So you don't have to take this recoil cover off to do this, but I like to take it off. I like to do a proper job and just clean everything in here. And I don't know if this mower's going to kick back, so I might have a look at the flywheel key. Now I can easily get that off with this impact drive. So let's just take these out. This is just 3 parts here. One there, one at the front, and there'll be one at the other side as well, which is round here, so I'll just take that off. I'll just show you something as well. This one here, this actual bolt's actually slightly wider, like a, I think you call it a shroud round the outside of it. My terminology is not brilliant, as I'm sure you'll know if you've seen the channel, but that one's wider because it actually goes through the exhaust guide. You can see it moving about, and it holds the exhaust guide on as well as actually bolting its recoil to this engine. So now you've done that, you can lift this whole thing off. You can just move this out of the way. We can get in a lot easier. And I like having full access to see exactly what's going on when I repair these mowers. So there are a few things I check when I take this recoil cover off. I'm going to take this off as well and check this kill switch at the back. I like to check the flywheel key in here. I like to take all this dirt out of here, which I'm doing now. I like to check that this governor flap is in one piece and it's not somehow snapped off. I like to check it's all moving about as well, as it should be there, because this regulates the speed when you're cutting thicker or thinner grass. I like to check that this spark plug lead here hasn't been moved over here and been trapped. You don't have any nicks in it, isn't broken. And I like to look at the state of these cooling fins in here and make sure they're not all fill up with mess, like you can see in here. This is just all dirty, so everything's just really dirty. I'm going to take this actual cover off and I'll show you this kill switch, and I'll show you why it needs to be cleaned as well. So it's another 1/4" socket. Some of these have a cover on, some of them don't. A lot of people put off by doing these mowers because they see all these covers and they're not sure how to get them off, and they kind of don't go any further than taking the air filter box off, which is great for us if you're looking to repair these for profit. So but these come off so simple. And this here, let's just have a look at that before I move anything. This is a kill switch here. See this little thing here, this is a terminal. You pull this at the top, this moves away, and if this doesn't disconnect, you won't get spark. You see how much dirt's on that? Any dirt in between that and the top part, it's like this little bit here, I'm trying to show you, that connects with this here. So you can see if you've got no spark, a lot of people message me saying, how do you replace the ignition coil on your lawnmower? I've never ever had an ignition coil fail on here. What it usually is the kill switch, or this wire that runs right round here under the flywheel, and it runs into here. You can see there, this wire either breaks or this kill switch is filthy like this one, and this isn't far from not working. So you can probably just see what I'm talking about. Just get this in here, you can see all this dirt in here. See all that? That gets in between there, you won't get a connection, and you definitely won't get spark. I'm just going to clean all this out the top of here. Now I've got this impact, I'm just going to take this this actual top nut off here. I keep calling it a bolt. There was a bolt in the the last video I said it twice, I meant nut. I'm going to take that off and I'm going to visually have a look at this flywheel key, because I've not pulled this over yet at all because it's got no fuel going through. I've not even pulled it over. I'm just going to zip this off here. We'll just have a quick inspection of this flywheel key. So if you are going to do this, I've got an electric corded one of these, and I've got this battery one. This has normally been powerful enough on most of these, not all of them, to take this top nut off here. If you're going to do this, once again, make sure this is removed from here. You can see there, got this off in seconds. I think every single time I've tried it with that actual drill, it's worked, apart from maybe once. And in here, I don't need to take this flywheel off, I can just check this actual crankshaft key in the top of here. So I'm happy with that. You can see how everything lines up nice and neatly here. This is all nice and square, and it's sat exactly in line with this. You don't want to see this key looking broken, or this actual passage here slightly across, or the key shattered. If it looks perfect like that, there's no reason to replace it. There's no reason to take this flywheel off. Just if you've got the tools, just take it off and have a look, because that's the main reason the lawnmowers kick back, is if this flywheel's sheared and you've hit something underneath with a blade, and it's actually protected the crankshaft by bending and breaking off this keyway here. I also like to look at this gap here on this ignition coil. There's a tiny little gap down that side. This side, the gap doesn't seem to be particularly big, so I'll quickly show you how to set this as well. So I'm just going to give you a rough and ready guide to setting this ignition coil. As I've said, that gap in there is very small. I'm sure it's correct, I'm sure it's just dirt on the other side. What I'm going to show you is these magnets on here. These actual wheels on here, these flywheels on here, have magnets on. So what you want to do is turn it to this position here where there's no magnets, and put this at the front next to this ignition coil here. That way you don't get the ignition coil grabbing the magnets when you're trying to set it. Now if you take a 1/4 inch socket again and just undo these parts here, this is a governor flap, this plastic part that goes across here, and undo this bottom one here, to the far side should I say. Just undo them lightly. This doesn't grab hold of this flywheel key, and you can get a piece of card like an old greetings card or a playing card a lot of people use. This might be a little bit thick, but you'll get the idea. If you put that in between the ignition coil here, and then turn this till the magnets, keep it even, turn it till the magnets grab it, you'll see these magnets actually grab hold of that there. You can set this in perfect position. You know you've got an even gap. Once you've got the even gap and the magnets have got hold of this, you can tighten these back up again, and that way you know you've got an even gap between the ignition coil and this actual flywheel as well. So if you're not sure, you don't need to take this whole thing off. If you just want to set the gap, that's a rough and ready way of doing it. And then just turn this, you can either turn this and pull this out, and you'll know you've got an even gap then between this flywheel and ignition coil. Not difficult to do. It's just if you try and do it against the magnets to start with, you'll never get this card in. So that's how you do it. I've done loads of videos that show you how to do that, and you can just ensure then, just in case you're wondering, if you've got a perfect gap between this wheel here and this actual ignition. So before we go any further, I'm going to get a 13 and a 10mm extended socket. If you don't have all this gear, you can just use a spanner, by the way. You don't need anything fancy. One tip to getting this one off is, again, take this petrol cap off here and just get in a little bit better. Just to undo these parts. There's only two to take off. There's this one here. As I said, there's one at the front as well, which is just there. And I'll show you how to drop this whole thing out of the way. And what this wants really, before we take anything apart, is just a really good clean up, so we're not getting any dirt at all inside the carburettor. And there's going to be no dirt in these cooling fins as well. So you can see here, probably just about get my finger on there as well. I can just take this one out of here. That pulls out. There's a little spacer here. If you just take that out as well, put everything in a metal tray that's got magnets on. That's what I tend to do. Then I'm going to get a 10mm. I've put the 10mm on here. That don't even need to be an extended one really. I don't know why I've got that. And anyway, I'll just take that off here. You can just zip that one off there like that and take that one out. 2 bolts. I mean, it couldn't be any simpler than this. You don't need to worry about any of this top part here. I'm going to show you an easy way to get this off. Just pull this off here, and then there's one linkage here. You can just see at the top, which is there. If you just turn this towards you, I'm just going to put this actual petrol cap back on here. If you just tip this thing up like this way towards you, with the primer towards you, this actual little hook here just pops out like that, and this whole thing here just comes away. You can see there I've got this whole thing off. There's no disconnecting any leads or anything like that, any separate fuel tanks. And you can probably see here why I want to take it off and why it really needs a really good service up. Just lack of maintenance really, and a simple primer bulb and a quick service. This lawnmower could have lasted him a lot of years. So off camera I'm just going to spend 10 minutes really just cleaning all this crud off here. If you see all this here in the cooling fins, this is likely to have overheating problems and it'll cut out. Look at that lot there, that was a good one, wasn't it? Probably a mouse's nest where Mickey Mouse has been in, so maybe has nibbled his primer bulb, to be fair to the guy. But I want all this out of here, I want all this dirt off here. So I'm going to spend 10 minutes just with an air compressor. If you haven't got one of them, get yourself an old paintbrush or something, just clean it off with some old fuel, clean all this off around here. I'm going to clean off this actual little kill switch at the back as well, and make sure all this is tidy, so when we service this carb up and put it back together, everything's neat and tidy. And if you have set this ignition coil, make sure this governor flap still moves about freely. You want that tight enough to tighten it down, but not too tight that you're trapping this from moving. Okay, so now I've got everything cleaned off. I'm actually getting here without causing any further problems with dirt getting back in. I'm going to undo these 5 screws on top of here. These feel very, very tight. When they're very tight like that, it's usually because this has never ever been off here. So I've got that one started there. Always undo these with a normal screwdriver, by the way. They are very tight, probably the tightest I've ever known. I've got 2 undone there. Let's just have a go at these other ones. Just be real careful not to round anything off. Yeah, I don't think these have ever been off before. And I'm hoping when we replace the diaphragm and gasket in here, which is what provides the fuel from the tank to the carb, I should get this priming. I can actually check that before I put this back on this mower. So I think I've got most of these undone. Yeah, just about. I've never known them that tight, to be honest with you. So I'll take these out. What happens over time with these gaskets in here, this comes off as well, by the way, you can pop that back on, is they wrinkle up over time and they don't vibrate properly, so they don't transfer the fuel from the tank into this carb, and of course it won't prime, it won't run, it won't do anything it should. Let's just get these last few up here and I'll show you exactly what I mean. So I'll just lift this off here. There's a little screen filter on here as well. You can take that off if you wish. Try and keep it nice and round. Makes it a lot easier to put back on. And this is what I'm going to show you here. There's a diaphragm. If you tip this upside down, all the screws drop out, by the way, in the same place. And I'll show you exactly what I mean with this diaphragm and gasket. There's 2 parts to this. There's the actual diaphragm, which is the thinner part, and the gasket, which is the thicker part. So I'll split that there, like that. And that's your gasket. You can see here. Can you see just how wrinkled this part is here? Got all this massive bubble in here. It's all wrinkled up. When you get them like that, that's why it won't pump any fuel through. It's really simple to replace. All you've got to do is get a new one. But there are loads and loads and loads of cheap aftermarket ones on eBay that you don't want to buy. I list genuine ones on the website at Repair Lawnmowers for Profit. I've never had a problem with them. I used to buy aftermarket ones and use them a lot, which were okay, but there was that many in the last few years that have been poor. I think Retro Restored did a video on some Chinese ones. I think they lasted about 20 seconds, and when he took it off, the whole thing had shriveled up. So I don't bother with those anymore. I buy the genuine ones. I said you can buy them at repairlawnmowersforprofit.com. They're on the parts store on there. So we're going to give this a little clean out here. You don't want to be doing all this and putting a rubbish gasket in for, you know, saving whatever it is, I don't know, 50p or something. So I'm going to clean all that out in here. Make sure all these little squares in here, down below my finger, are all nice and neat and there. You can blow them out with an air compressor or some compressed air, or even use a cotton bud, as I used to do in the early days when I didn't have anything to use. I used to get some actual cotton buds, you know, I used to clean the ears out with. I'll just pop them in there and make sure all that dirt's out of there. You can see there, I've just cleaned them out with the air compressor. They're nice and clean. A few other things about these carbs here. Do not lose this little spring on the bottom of here. There's a tiny little spring on the bottom of this. You can just see there. Don't lose that, otherwise it won't run either. I'll take that off very carefully without stretching it. I'll put that in my parts tray. This actual tube here, this pickup tube, pulls off if you're strong enough. It actually unclips. You can get some carb spray and clean the tips of this off. Look through the other end and make sure there's a hole, make sure you can see through the screen. If you get something really little here, you can take the main jet out. I don't bother with these carbs because I find you can easily break the plastic off the side of here and make them too wide so they don't run right. So basic things are take the spring off, put it somewhere safe. I always take this filter off here. And all I'm going to do is just fill this up with carb spray now. I'm going to blow this all out with the compressor and pop it back together. Don't lose the spring. You know, these things jump off and they will go a mile. I use this carb spray on everything I've got, plastic, metal, whatever it is. I just spray a bit of this in everything, everywhere I can get, all that down the little holes, anywhere you can see. Just fill it up with the stuff, get it in here, get it down this main jet here, all the little holes, anywhere you can get it down, just put it in, blow this whole thing out. You can see how that's firing out the other side. Just give this thing a real good clean out. Make sure there's no dirt or mess in there. I usually get some and fire it in the end of here as well, like this. Make sure it's coming through the tip, you can see there. Make sure this is nice and clean. I also clean this off as well. This little screen filter, this just stops any dirt getting pulled up from the petrol tank into this carb. And what I then do is I'm just going to blow through all these little holes I can see with some compressed air. Just be real careful when you're doing that. There's actually a little ball in here. It's like a almost like a ball bearing. Just beware that if you're blowing it out with a compressor that you don't actually blow this out of here. When I'm doing that I normally put my thumb over here because I've known these come out before, and you don't want to lose that or it won't prime properly. You can see there's some fuel coming out of there, and what we're going to do when we put this back together before we bolt this back on is we're going to make sure we've got some fuel jumping across from one side to the other. So I'm going to blow all that through with the compressor, wait till it's completely dry, we'll put this back together and then we'll get a better diaphragm than this one. It's all wrinkled up here. We'll get a much better one than that, a brand new one, and we'll put that on once everything's dry. You must make sure all this tank's nice and dry as well so it's not wrinkling up as we pop this back on it. So I'll just cover a few questions I get from people. Sometimes I get people who email me who say I've replaced this diaphragm and gasket and I'm still getting revving up and down issues and surging and stalling problems and stuff like that. Well, one of the reasons might be because you could forget to put this spring back on here. You could have these actual inlets here, these O-rings if you like, that don't form a good seal, and from time to time these actual carbs, because they're like plastic sat on an aluminium tank, they tend to warp and you don't get a good seal between the actual tank and the carb. In most of the time it's because you've got inferior diaphragm and gaskets and not genuine ones. So to put this back together, we'll put this actual diaphragm on first, make sure everything's nice and clean and tidy, and then you put the gasket on top of that and just loosely line things up. Make sure that this is actually back on here. This actual screen needs to be back on. You can see why I said don't lose the roundness of this because it's quite difficult to sneak on there sometimes. This plastic tube here that I've already put back on, make sure it clicks like that when you put that back on. I'm going to drop this down this hole. I'm going to keep an eye on the spring as well, make sure the spring sits nice and evenly when I put this down. It's actually sat nicely. So I'm going to do that, line everything up from the top so it's sat nice and evenly. I'm going to get a screw in at each side. I'm going to loosely tighten this up one side and then at the other go right across. It doesn't matter if it moves about a little bit because you can still see where the holes line up. Before you tighten each one up, just have a look from the top and make sure everything lines up. And what I like to do is I like to get all these neatly in position before I tighten any of these down. One little tip as well I'll just mention before I forget is sometimes, it doesn't happen very often, this little part here that looks like a Y, sometimes it can flick over there. You can get this ending up over here and it'll run like full speed or it won't run at all. Make sure this little happy face, this smiley face here, is facing you when you do this and it's not going past this little tab here, because I've had a few questions about that as well. Just make sure everything stays nice and neat, nice and lined up. We've got all those screws in there, so I'm going to start tightening these down, working across from one side to the other without tightening them up too far at first, just a case of getting everything evenly pressed down between the diaphragm and gasket and between this carb and this tank. So So there we go, we've got everything tightened back up and everything's nice and neat. So what we want to see now is, we want to see if this primes. If I press this primer bulb, can you see how I'm getting some fuel jumping across there? Hopefully you can just about see that, because this is what wasn't happening before. You see this, when I actually press this primer bulb here, how I get the fuel jumping across here. You see that? That's because we've refitted this primer bulb. And even with this primer bulb on before we serviced the carb, we weren't getting any fuel going through there. As you can see, that's working perfectly now, and we've got a good chance of this lawnmower starting up. So for those that saw the last video that I actually published, which is in the top right hand corner of your screen now, that was actually on a Tecumseh engine, and the difference between getting the carb and the tank off and doing this little servicing is, I would say, 10 times, certainly more time consuming. Not a lot more difficult, but certainly more time consuming, and that's the reason that these classic Briggs engines are the absolute perfect engine to start repairing lawnmowers for profit on. If you're interested in that, please take a look at the website, which is repairlawnmowersforprofit.com. There's about 35 articles on there, including Briggs And Stratton servicing, Hondas, Tecumsehs, and also my complete guide to making money selling lawnmowers for profit as well. So if you get a minute, take a look at repairlawnmowersforprofit.com. You'd be doing me a huge favour, and if you haven't already, just hit the subscribe button for me. I'd really appreciate that. Leave me a comment in the comment section of this video as well if you think, or you have, or you've owned a battery lawnmower, because they seem to be all the rage now. I'm not too sure how much longer loads of these will be around for, hopefully a few more years yet. But if you've got a battery operated lawnmower, or a cordless one, leave me a comment in the comment section. Let me know any problems you've got with it, or if it's reliable, or what you think of it. I saw a Works one today, which was second hand. It had been used maybe 2 or 3 times. It had 2 batteries with it, and I reckoned it was really good. And I looked at the reviews on Amazon for it, and it seemed to get really good reviews. I'm not sure what repairs they might need doing, but if you've got any experience of them, or you think they're great, or you think they're rubbish, or anything like that, leave me a comment in the comments section, because I'm quite interested just to get my hands on one and see exactly what's involved, if anything really, with the batteries, and the quality and the build quality and the power and how long they last. So leave me a comment in the comment section of this video with any information about these cordless battery operated lawnmowers. Right, so this has had a bit of a clean up. I've cleaned up these cooling fins in here. There's a few little bits in it. You can see all around here where the springs and linkages are. It's nice and clean. This actual kill switch on here at the back where we showed you before, how dirty that was. Can you see how clean that is and how it connects there? That bit there, it's got the paint one off on the left, slides underneath that little tab there. You can probably just see there, just a little tab there, just there, the tip of where my fingernail is. This bit presses onto that. When you pull the lever at the top, it disconnects, and it's the disconnection that allows spark to go from this actual kill switch into this ignition coil, into the plug. So make sure that that works. So you can see it's all clean and tidy. I've got this carb back together and priming. I want to show you how to hook this back on. We'll drop this down onto this bit of path here, this grass here, and we'll give this lawnmower a go and see if it fires up. So a few tips just before I put this back on. Make sure you've got these actual rubber O-rings on here. Make sure they've not slid off onto this actual part here. If you're looking for them, you might find them on there. Really simple to put back on. There's this one linkage here. I'll show you a bit closer up. If you've lost those rings, they might be on that part here. But this here all hooks together. This is actually hooked down the longest part here with the biggest hook. Actually hooks through this governor flap at the top. And there's just a little bit at the bottom there, which I'm going to connect to the carb. So the trick to getting this carb back on is to slide it evenly onto this actual inlet manifold and just hook this into this section of the carb here, making sure that this part here, as I explained before, hasn't accidentally gone over there. This must be in the centre here. There is actually this little tab here that stops it doing it, but occasionally, especially if you've never done it before, you can accidentally get in a mess and end up there. So I'm going to show you how I put this back on. So this is really quite simple to do once you've practiced and done it a couple of times. You just hook that little part in there that I showed you through the hole, and then you simply just push this back onto that manifold like that. You can even let go of that and the whole thing doesn't drop down. What I like to do is just move this about here, make sure all these springs and linkages are moving freely. You can see there that they are. We've got this little spacer here which goes back in here that way around. Before I put that on, I'm just going to give that a bit of a clean up. So I've given that a little bit of a clean. There's no point putting dirty parts back on, is there? So you put that spacer in like that and see how it fits like that. It just drops in between the actual carb there, and I'll just put that in there. Longer bolt we took out earlier. Just line everything up like that. I'll just start that off there. Real simple to do, as I've said before. Just 2 bolts. I actually took this rubber boot off earlier, so I'll put that back on now. You get a little bit more room to put that back on before you bolt this back together. That just slides back over. And then we have a 10mm that sits on the front here. It just keeps it nice and level. I'll put that there. And that's it. Basically, once you've tightened these 2 parts back up, this whole thing's back on. The carb and the tank and everything. You can press it if you like and make sure it still primes. I'm just going to tighten these up. And this whole thing's back on this mower, which is absolutely brilliant. As I've said, if you watch the previous video I did, taking a carb off and servicing it and putting it back on, I think it probably took me about an hour to gauges. So great little motors these. Most of the time a lot of people message me and they say if I've bought something, say it's a Tecumseh engine or one with an Mountfield owned brand engine in, they'd normally take the engines off, and if they've got a spare one they normally just put one of these on instead. So they're that reliable. They've been around a long time and they're so simple to take apart and service. You don't really need any specialist tools, so it's a great little hobby, making yourself a little side income, or if you have the time, perhaps making yourself a full-time income. So that's all back together. Put that back on there. I'm having trouble with this today. I've had it on petrol can, I've had it on here. Don't know where else I'm going to put it. Let's put it back on there. So, right. So now it's back on. Let's just check a few things. See, all this is moving about nicely. If you want the lawnmower to run a little bit quicker, by the way, if you just want to speed a Briggs mower up like that, you can just bend this tab a little bit and it'll run a little bit quicker. I've even seen them bend right over here. It don't have to be dead straight in the middle. So I like them to run a little bit quicker, but I'm not sure how this runs yet. But before I put the air filter box on, it runs too slow. I'm just bending that forward a little bit. Looks a little bit far back to me. I've got all this back in here, and make sure that lines up there. You've got a bit of manoeuvrability there for when you put the recoil cover back on. And it's all clean and tidy. The cooling fins aren't blocked. We know the ignition coil's okay. We've got this brake and kill switch checked, and it's all set properly. There's no problems with there. You can adjust that by bending that top tab down slightly if you want. Carb's nice and serviced. We've got everything exactly where we want it. There's going to be no problems, hopefully, when we start this mower up. So I'm going to give this recoil cover a bit of a clean. We'll put that back on. We'll connect this plug up. I've actually cleaned underneath as well with a pressure washer, so that's all nice and tidy, and we'll give this a bit of a fire up. It's not unusual for me on the video not to fire one up straight away, but because I didn't have this priming properly, in fact, let's check that, I had no chance of firing it up. So let's put the recoil on, let's give this a go. So let's bolt this recoil cover back on. This ain't even taking this engine oil dipstick out of here. If you've done the same, just poke it back down the hole. This whole thing slides back on. Sure you've got this part under here. This bit I've just cleaned off. Try and line that up a little bit there, and make sure you don't have this actual lead here trapped between there like that. This needs to actually go in the centre. So make sure that's not trapped. I've got 3 parts to fit back in here. Remember those 3 parts here? They're all slightly different. There's a bigger one that goes on the exhaust and 2 are exactly the same. So make sure you save this one. I always do that one last. I'm going to put these in, line these up and just get these started. So we'll just get them finger tight like that there. You can see there. This other one, pop it through the front here. Don't fasten these tight until you've got all 3 in. I'm going to take the wider one around here and I'll take you with me and show you what I'm talking about. This last bolt. So you can see here, this actually should go through here like this, and it actually goes through the exhaust guard, which is why it's wider, and this part holds the exhaust guard on. So it'll be a little bit fiddly to get back in, so don't tighten the other 2 up first. Have a fiddle about with this, make sure they get all 3 in nice and even without cross-threading anything. I'm just going to refit this kill switch cover as well. Even though it had a cover on, you can see how dirty that was as well. So only takes a second, that just drops in the back, really simple, and you just get your quarter-inch socket and tighten that back up. And just so we start, and something I've not done yet on this service, I haven't sharpened the blade. I'll do that off camera. I just do that on a little grinder I've got on the bench. Just follow the natural angle of the blade and bolt this back on. I should have done that really while this tank was off, so I'm not tipping it up. As long as I don't tip it too far over or right over, I won't have a problem. So I'm just going to check there's some oil in this mower. I haven't changed this yet for the simple reason I haven't got any. I've actually run out. So yeah, there's plenty on there. We've got enough on there to give this a go. Once changing, it's not quite enough in there, so I'm going to buy some more of that. I'll pump that out with my extractor off camera as well, and I'll change the oil. And I've got a box of these plugs, and this looks like it's got the original plug in. You can still see it's got this little Briggs logo on here, if you noticed earlier. So give that a bit of a clean off. I'm going to put this back on here, clip it back on. One other thing to mention as well, as I've said, make sure this doesn't get cut when you put this recoil cover back on. On the newer ones of these Briggs, take a look inside here and make sure this part should have a nice little circle on. On some of the new ones, these are a bit like cheese, or a bit soft and, you know, rubbish. And I've seen a few of these that are a different design, and when they've been pushed on, they've got bent on the plug, so of course you won't get spark. So I don't need to fit this little yellow cover yet. Let's just drop this on the floor and let's try this mower and see if it runs. What I like to do with these is I like to run it without the air filter, so I can keep an eye on all these linkages. One thing I will mention as well is this has got a brake on. Don't ever bypass this brake at the top, because you don't want to be stepping on the side and getting your feet under here, or if you're messing with it with your fingers, you could easily do something daft and put your foot under. So a couple of bits of safety is drop this down to the lowest height if you've not done it before, you're not sure. This handle wants tightening up as well here. I'm going to give this a go. Now I want to be able to see what these linkages are doing, so I've not put this air filter back on it. The air filter will get cleaned up with some old fuel. I'll just dip it in it and squeeze it out, and that'll be fine. So let's prime this and let's see if it starts and runs. There's no self-drive on this, so let's just see if it runs. I'm hoping it don't kick back. I hate lawnmowers that kick back. Give it a bit more petrol. Don't feel too bad to pull over. Not so good. Let's try another plug. If I like to do this live, I'm amazed that didn't start, to be honest with you. I don't see why it wouldn't. It's getting fuel. It's got some oil in it. Everything's set up exactly as it should be. Let's just take this plug out of here. And that's quite unusual for that not to start. I know it's getting fuel. Oh, the plug's black. And I know it's getting the kill switch is all nice and clean and tidy. I can actually manually check it for spark if it doesn't start, and there's no signs of life. So these are B2 LM NGK spark plugs. These are listed on the website as well. I use these all the time. I don't use anything other than NGK. I never have. Don't buy B&Q's own brand. They don't work very well at all. In fact, probably get told off for this, but I'm sure they design them not to work, so you buy new products from B&Q. What everybody does is replace the spark plug, and if that don't fix it, what do? They go and buy a new one. Anyway, I really probably shouldn't say that, but I've never had a good one yet from B&Q. Buy decent NGK ones. Let's give this quite a bit more fuel. And I don't see any reason why this shouldn't start, really, although it doesn't. Right, so that starts. You can probably see there's loads of white smoke. Can you see all that coming out of it? That's because I've had this tipped up. That's just oil that's gone through to the exhaust. It's in the exhaust, and once that burns off, this will run fine. And you'll probably notice it's running a little bit slow. When that burns off, it should run a little bit quicker as well. If it doesn't, I'll just bend this tab a little bit further forward, so it starts and runs fairly even. So let's run it for a few minutes at a time till this smoke clears. There we go, I'm happy with that. That's running at a nice speed. I haven't got the air filter on yet. As I said, I'll clean that. The wheels are spinning round a little bit because the adjusters they're at different heights, so I didn't want to step around the side while I was filming and get my feet anywhere near the bottom of that. But starts and runs nice, runs evenly as well. I say if you want to speed these up a little bit, you can bend that tab forward a little bit and maybe just do that a touch. And I'm just going to fire this up once again just to make sure it has no starting issues. When I put the cover back on, I'll probably leave this running for 5 or 10 minutes, make sure there's no stalling problems at all. But everything's working as it should. Yeah, that's great. One thing I like to look for as well is around the edge of the carb, make sure there's nothing leaking where you've changed the diaphragm and gasket as well. Make sure everything's tight there and everything's moving freely as it should be. So that's great. We've just got a few little jobs left to do on this, and this mower's complete. I could just do with a grass box for it now. I'm going to tighten these handles up first of all, because it's awful when you get one that's like this while the handles move about. So I'm going to tighten those up, clean the air filter, and we'll pop that back on, and we'll put this cover back on. So I'll just give these handles a tighten up. I also like to cable tie this at the bottom as well, so it's not all flapping about when you sell it. Make sure these are nice and tight. Nothing worse using a lawnmower when the handles aren't tight. It's really annoying. Every time you turn it round, the whole thing wobbles about. These are real slack. Could also do with a little thing on the handle here for holding the pull cord, so you're not having to bend right down here to pull it over every single time. But it's a good tidy mower this. I spend a few minutes tidying this up. And they always look much better with grass boxes on the back when you come to sell them as well. Obviously they're selling a lot more with a drive on and a lot more with a box, but it's just one I found today, and I think for £25 I think that's a bit of a bargain, to be honest. So I've just sharpened this blade here, and I've just cleaned this air filter as well. So the correct way to get this air filter box back on is that way around, this pointing this way. Put that back on there. This has been a bit of a pain, this video. How many times have I lost that in this video? We have a competition. Too many, you're probably thinking. That wants to go on the top of there. That seals this air filter box on. Slide that on there. Push this down here. We'll tighten this air filter box on. So don't forget the tip I said about if the air filter box is facing the wrong way, somebody's probably been in here, because they definitely have. Why would you take it off and just turn it around the wrong way? So there was a bit more wrong than the primer bulb not working on this. So the primer bulb was obviously split at the beginning of the video, but even with a new one on, it didn't work, did it? So I've had to service the carb, but for I think around a pound, £2 diaphragm and gasket, I'm not sure what they are now. We've got the primer bulb sorted, the diaphragm and gasket sorted, the kill switch clean, we've set the ignition coil clean, this whole thing out, the air filter, sharpen the blade. I've got to change the oil yet, and we've got ourselves a nice running Mc Culloch M40 Petrol Lawnmower. So there we go, giving this a little bit of a clean up. All I do with this is get a big tub of WD-40 and spray it absolutely everywhere, and then when you take photos of this to sell, it shines up really nice, and it kind of looks a lot newer. As you can tell here from the video, it shines up really nice. What I do is I do that and I quickly just go around it with some cloth and take the photos while it's all nice and shiny. So I'm not sure what I'll do with this. No doubt as I'm filming this later on I'll have sold it, I'll have put it on Facebook Marketplace and somebody will have bought this. But one thing with Facebook Marketplace is put it on, you'll get about 10 messages, you'll get different types of people. You'll get somebody that says I'll come next Wednesday for it, and then you'll suddenly get a message from somebody saying, are you in now? They won't negotiate price, they'll just come and give you exactly what you've asked for it, because they know its actual value, and then probably got a box for it. So I'll wait till I've got 7 or 8 messages, and I'll just pick whoever I think is going to turn up, pay me what I want for it, and then go away again. Always make sure you've got some change as well. You get some people saying, oh, they're just a £5 short, or can you change this for 20? So have a bit of change at home if you start doing this, and make sure you've got some change so you get exactly what you're asking for these, and don't give them away either. So obviously I ain't got a box with this, I've got no drive with this. I think I'm going to ask around £45–50 for this, unless I can get a box, and I might keep it for myself. So hopefully you've enjoyed my little ride out with me and picking this Briggs 450 up. That shows you how to service it and do everything you need to do, really. Just to sharpen the blade, just take it off. As I've said, just follow the natural angle of the blade and put it back on. Make sure it's nice and tight. You can pump the oil out using an extractor, but all the main things you're going to need to do on this type of mower, or any Briggs classic motor such as this one, you can do using this video or any video that you'll see at the end of this video I'll actually link to all the Briggs and Stratton videos I've done in a playlist. So thanks for watching. You'll see them at this side of the screen with a subscribe button down below. Please consider subscribing if you haven't already. Thanks very much for watching. Thanks to all my subscribers, and I'll see you again next time.